En síkópatar eða siðblindingjar aðeins 1–2% mannfjöldans, en þeir fremja stóran hluta alvarlegra ofbeldisbrota. Rannsóknir sýna svo að þeir eru miklu líklegri til að sleppa fyrr úr fangelsi en aðrir fangar vegna hæfileika sinna til að ljúga og blekkja. Siðblindingjum stendur á sama alla nema sjálfa sig og engin meðferð hefur dugað hingað til að fá þá til að bæta ráð sitt. Sálfræðingurinn og lögreglumaðurinn Dr. Matthew Logan hélt námskeið siðblindu á læknadögum á föstudaginn. Og hvernig hægt að þekkja hana, hvaða áhrif hefur hún á samfélagið og hvernig sé hægt að bregðast við til að draga úr skaðanum sem hún veldur. En hann bendir á að siðblindingar séu alls ekki allir glæpamenn, margir þeirra hafi til dæmis gert það gott í viðskiptalífinu í gegnum tíðina. Þóra Arnórsdóttir hitti Logan og spurði strennt samfélag, ýtti undir eða hampaði ákveðnum einkennum siðblindu.
I think society has always, through history, has always admired some of the characteristics of the psychopath. I imagine that some of the greatest warriors of all time, Genghis Khan, for instance, was psychopathic just from the reading I've done. So yes, there are characteristics that are very much admired, especially in a male-dominated world, with some of the characteristics being quite macho and aggressive.
Can you just give us a few examples?
Sure. Well, one of them, the need for stimulation, is something that we're still just really touching the surface on. With the psychopath, there's a very high need for stimulation and a real proneness to boredom. So they're very action-oriented. You know, when you ask a psychopath when you're interviewing them, what do you do on your off time? Like when you're not working, what would you like to do? And typically the psychopath wants to race motorcycles, jump out of airplanes, do things that are very stimulating, exciting. It's why a lot of them actually have some drug use problems too, because that stimulation from heroin, cocaine, methamphetamines also plays a part.
But how big a problem are psychopaths in, you might say, the Western society where the most research has been done?
Well, I rolled it out to law enforcement about 10 years ago, and we're still doing that, criminal justice and law enforcement, because we're finding out that 4 to 5% of the criminals are committing 40 to 45% of the violent crime. And that's not even touching general crime. But the violent crime, very, very high percentage created by a very small number of people, and those are the psychopaths. So it's a very clearly a law enforcement issue, a criminal justice issue. The more we know about them, the more we can target them. And my role really has been to say, let's if we want to reduce crime, let's focus on the 5%ers. Let's focus on the ones that are committing most of the crime and are making more victims in our society.
But then it turns out in Canada, where research was done, that they are 2.5 times more likely to get out of prison faster than other prisoners. Why is that?
It's because of their glib and superficial charm and their conning and manipulation. Those are two of the factors that we actually rate for psychopathy. That glib and superficial charm and that ability to con and manipulate. They can manipulate police officers, psychologists, National Parole Board. They're amazing at their ability to con and manipulate.
What makes a psychopath a psychopath? Why do people grow up without a conscience, if you might say so?
Yeah, there's been a lot of research. There's over 1,200 research projects that have been created on psychopathy. What we're finding more recently is that there are brain abnormalities. There are hardwiring differences. When this first began, there was a feeling that it was more nurture, the way you were raised, than it was nature. But now, because of MRI studies, the ability to actually put the psychopath on an MRI and watch the brain, the responses in the brain to certain stimuli, we now know that there are actually some neurological differences in the psychopathic brain.
But is it a combination of both?
Yes, it is. Yes, it's a combination. So I would suggest that it looks like this: that there has to be the brain abnormality and then the nurture. That when you have that combination of the predisposition plus the nurture, the environment that maybe a person is neglected, rejected, abandoned, socially isolated in childhood and adolescence, that just continues to play a part in developing the psychopath.
But then there's the question of treatment. Is there any treatment that works? Can you be a psychopath and then not be it? Like, is it possible to install a conscience?
Well, treatment to this point is not looking very good, and there have been a number of good attempts to treat psychopaths, and there are people that say we can treat psychopaths, and I keep saying show me the evidence. And I've been involved in treatment of offenders that are psychopathic, and I personally haven't seen any advancement. I'm not saying we can't treat them. I'm saying we haven't really found a good treatment modality. There are things that are better than others. Not trying to treat them through emotional content. I was in a program where we tried to treat offenders by getting them in touch with their emotions, and the more I learned about psychopathy, the more I learned what a waste of time, because they don't have an ability to empathize for another individual. The only person they care about is self. So we have to develop treatment that actually focuses on what's the best thing for you rather than what's the best thing for society.
But how many individuals are psychopaths? I mean, we always see the movies where there's a psychopath and that's the excuse for, or the explanation for all kind of strange behavior. But how many are they really?
Well, the research tells us that there's about 1% of the general population. So 1 in 100 people would be psychopathic. In criminal populations, we would expect maybe 50–80% to be psychopathic. In actual fact, it's about 20 to 25% of a jail population that are psychopathic. So a lot of psychopaths aren't in jail. A lot of them are walking the street. A lot of them are in relationship with someone you know. And when I tell cops to, how to look for psychopaths that maybe don't have a lot of criminal versatility, they're not in jail, they're out in the street, some of the things we look for are this multiple chaotic relationship, because they grind people to powder and they ship them out like yesterday's garbage. And so the person who just is so self-centered, not caring about anybody but themselves, and willing to just ditch somebody to grab somebody else that comes along that looks a little bit better, that is an indicator that this might be a psychopathic individual.
But they actually can function in the society as decent citizens.
Oh my goodness, and that's the difference between antisocial personality disorder and psychopathy. Is the antisocial personality disorder, you can actually see them, you can smell them sometimes, you know what I mean? They're pretty, they're out there, and you can tell who they are. The psychopath is a chameleon. They can fit into any part of society, and some of them are in charge of corporations.
But there's nothing you can do about that, is it?
Well, I think we can. It's coming at us. We're developing a B scan. Dr. Robert Hare, Dr. Paul Babiak, who have written the book Snakes in Suits, When Psychopaths Go to Work, really focusing on the corporate psychopath. They're also developing a B scan, which is a derivative of the PCLR, of the psychopathy checklist, where businesses can actually do a bit of scanning before they hire or before they promote into executive class. So there are some things coming, because we do have to, they can wreak havoc on a business and destroy individuals within corporations.
But they can also function quite well, and with their predatory behavior, like in the financial sector.
Yes.
I mean, I'm just thinking about a film like Wall Street or whatever.
Wall Street's a perfect example. Perfect example. And the person of Michael Douglas, especially in Wall Street 1, I didn't really see it that well established in Wall Street 2, but Wall Street 1 was classic Snakes in Suits. And here was a person that, he says, give me people without feelings. If you need a friend, get a dog. It's warfare out there. Those are all statements that would come from a psychopath. So Wall Street 1 is a very good depiction of the snake in suit.
This all depicts men, usually. Women can be psychopaths as well, but what's the proportion? Do you know that?
Yes, I do. When we first started, we were talking about maybe 97% male and 3% female in terms of psychopath. We now are more at the 89% male, 11% female, because we weren't willing to recognize that women can murder, that women are vicious, that women can be without conscience as well as males. And so we're recognizing that that there are females in society that are psychopathic and have the exact same personality traits as the males.
Don't you ever, I mean, doing your job, meeting all those psychopaths, doing the assessments and all that, don't you ever just get pessimistic and you know, just feel bad about the humankind?
I've been there. You know, I was a police officer with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police for 28 years, and so I think I got through a lot of that early in my career as a police officer. So these days, I don't feel that way as much as I did in some of those early days where we were just throwing them in jail, watching them come out. Mm-hmm. So these days, I feel like we just need to get more education into society about this individual called the psychopath.
So we're on the right path.
We are. I'd like to move faster on that one, but we are on the right path. Yeah.
Thank you very much for being with us.
You're very welcome.